Hi, I'm Rich MacDonald, and I'm going to be presenting a series of 4 videos on basic snare drum technique and how it applies to the drum set. So here in part 1, we're going to describe the Fulcrum, a couple systems of playing, the level system and the Molar system. So very first thing then is let's talk about holding the stick. If you find the balance point of any stick on these Vic Firth sticks, I'll show you here, they have a couple little dots, and between those dots is basically the balance point of the stick. So you can see how you can hold it there in between those dots. What I do is I pull back then about an inch and a half from that dot, and on the first sticks there's a little flag here where I put my index finger and thumb for the fulcrum. Now what I'm doing here is I'm actually compensating because if you held it right here, the weight of your fingers is going to make it so you're not going to really be able to control it very well. So what you're doing is you're compensating for the weight of your fingers so you get as much bounce as you can out of that stick. Here it is in the left hand. Every stick's going to be a little bit different, but it's kind of the balance of this works out where it's almost like moving an apex on a teeter-totter, or any kind of balancing where if you had it here but you had more weight on one side, then you'd have to adjust that apex, and that's what we're doing here. I'll show you on another pair of sticks too. These are innovative percussion sticks, and this is the Chris Lamb model, and you can see I'm going to try to find that balance point again on this stick. I'm going to lose it here. Yeah, and then pull back a little inch and a half or so. You can test it this way. And after a while, you just get used to where that is on any stick. Now, holding the stick, for me, I like to have it between these two knuckles and with my thumb around it, so it's like this. And I like to have a little bit of space in here in the fulcrum area, and that allows me to use either wrist, all wrist, or fingers, or combinations of wrists and fingers. It's a very relaxed fulcrum. I like Gary Cook's version of this where he talks about squeezing a ladybug so as not to kill it, but to hold it just in your thumb and index finger, and that's how much weight, how much pressure you want on the stick. Not a lot, really. Okay, in terms of positioning on the drum, I think about a 60 to 70 degree angle. Some people talk about a 90. It's a little far out for me. And then sometimes you see a 45, which is even kind of pinched in for me. I like it about here. Now, I like to play fairly flat. Some people would call this the German grip. In other words, my palms are almost parallel to the surface of the drum. I've seen a lot of this, which is kind of a 45. Some people call this the American grip, where you turn it in a little bit, so kind of oblique. And then I've also seen French, where your palms are 90 degrees from the surface, and you're using almost all fingers. All legitimate ways to play. For me, I like to keep it fairly flat. This also speaks to what I like to do getting to the cymbals, moving from a flat position, fairly flat position on the snare drum, to then almost a French turned over thumb up on the cymbals. Okay, so let's talk about the level system. The basic concept of the level system is that you're thinking from the tip of the stick up. So as you lift the stick, you have different levels, and these levels are going to correspond to dynamic levels. If I'm way down here at a 1, obviously it's very soft. And then if I'm way up here at a 5, it's quite loud. I'm not really changing anything in terms of how hard I'm hitting the drum. I'm just simply compensating for the rise or the lift of the stick. The higher it is, the more velocity I need to get down there, and therefore the more volume I'm going to get. So we could go 1s, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 5 being the full stroke. So we'll show this with graphics. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, this is also great, obviously, for dynamic changes like crescendos and decrescendos. And of course, there's gradations in between those. But you also see this used a lot with drumline where you're trying to match other players. So everybody says, well, we're going to do this warm-up at 3s. And therefore, everybody has some idea of where that 3 is, having worked with it. So to illustrate the level system, then, I'm going to play a short little solo. This is sort of an abridged version of 3 camps. And it's going to feature 2 different stick levels. So I want to think about 3s and 1s. I could go 4 and 2, I could go 5 and 3, but just for the sake of this, I'm just going to go 3 and 1 are going to be my 2 stick heights. 3 being the accented note, and 1 being the unaccented note. So here we go. So it's important to remember that we're looking for contrast of these different stick heights. The 3 being here and the 1 being here. When you play an accent, you got it right back down in order to keep the unaccented notes consistent. So then, jumping then from the level system, we're going to talk about the Moeller system. The Moeller system is quite involved, and I don't want to get into all the details. There's a lot you can find online about it, especially on YouTube. But the way I'm going to describe it is a little bit of a modification of it. Sometimes the original Moeller would have you opening the fulcrum and playing like a whip stroke down to the surface. I don't do that. I keep my fulcrum here, and I still use the shoulder and the arm involved in the stroke, especially at the beginning, learning it. You're coming straight up, so you're actually dropping the stick, the head of the stick, the bead of the stick, and then coming down, you're leading with the butt of the stick, and then dropping it. But notice at the bottom, instead of stopping it like a whip stroke, I'm going to let it rebound. This is a modification I got from one of my teachers, Ed Soph, who used this stroke and taught me this idea of allowing the rebound. And of course, you could continue that rebound with the fingers underneath it. The other thing that's really interesting about the Moeller stroke is the idea that when you lift, then you can head for another location on the drum set, for a tom-tom or a cymbal, and I'll demonstrate that in the upcoming videos. One other sort of correlation, if you will, in understanding the Moeller stroke is the idea that at the bottom of the stroke you have to break the wrist as it comes down. I don't mean literally break it, but the idea is that it's almost like a marionette, if you will. The wrists are sort of on this, think about a string pulling on the wrist. So when you come down, you go back to the flat position and then you go up again. One of the problems when you're first learning this is you'll come down and then you'll continue to have this position. You want to, each time you come down, make that wrist break. Okay, so another aspect of the Moeller stroke is the idea of getting 3 for 1. Jim Chapin demonstrates this on his YouTube videos. So when you come down, you're getting 3 strokes for 1 drop stroke. Now, these 3 strokes, of course, if you just allow that rebound to happen, there's 2 strokes right there, right? And then if you do a tap on the way up, that's your 3rd stroke. And of course, the faster you go, the less of this you get. So now let's go back to our 3-camp solo, and instead of playing 3-to-1 in the level system, in other words, lifting from the tip of the stick, we're going to lift from the back of the stick, a la Molar. Same idea. 3, basically thinking about that same height and the same relationship of those 2 notes, accented and unaccented. So here it would be with the Molar. Ready? And 3, 4. One other way you can think about practicing the Moeller system, especially trying to get this 3-for-1 idea, is to practice playing this 3-camp solo with all the notes in one hand. Left hand. Another good idea with it is to practice it switching hands every time you switch accents. And so on. So in review, then, I'm going to play this little 3-camp solo, but this time I'm going to repeat each line, and I'm going to play the first line level system and the second line Molar system. So you can see the differences, clear differences between them. 3, 4. Molar. Level. Molar. Level. Molar. Level. Molar. So this concludes part 1. Let's jump into part 2 now, where we'll talk about different stroke types.